Well, thank you for joining us this afternoon for our SBIR STTR programs overview. My name is John Uberry. I'm with the Small Business and Technology Development Center in North Carolina, SBTDC for short. I am the SBIR program specialist within our technology development and commercialization team. This afternoon we'll be talking in some depth about the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer programs, giving you some history, some background, talking about ways to identify whether you are a fit as a business and if your technology is a fit with the interests of these programs. And then we'll talk about what are the services that we at the SBTDC can provide to you as you're going through that process of identifying fit and proceeding on to submit a proposal. You'll note on the right-hand side of your screen there is a toolbar. On that toolbar there is a location where you can type in questions. So if you have questions throughout the session this afternoon, feel free to type those in. And we'll cover those at the end. So we'll have about 5 minutes of Q&A at the end, and I'll read off your questions and provide you with some feedback on those. So in this presentation, we are going to talk about some mazes, some chocolate cake, and the ends of movies. So you'll see how each of these three pieces fit together over the next 30 to 40 minutes as we go through the presentation. So here's the official description of the SBIR and STTR programs. The program is a non-dilutive federal funding mechanism to help small businesses develop and commercialize innovative solutions to existing problems that the federal government has an interest in, and that technology presents a significant market potential. Okay, so that in itself is kind of a mouthful. The underlined bolded words are the key words that make this program unique. Unique in the fact that there are no other federal funding or even state funding mechanisms of this size that cover these key aspects. First, it's non-dilutive, meaning this funding that you receive through the SBIR and STTR mechanisms does not have to be paid back. It's not a loan mechanism, and it's not you're not giving up equity. You're not giving up any ownership. So it's not as if an angel or a venture capitalist would come in to fund you. You're not giving up ownership. All of the ownership is retained by the small business. It is for small businesses. Okay, this is not a university funding mechanism. It is for small businesses to carry out R&D. Okay, there can be university components that participate with the small business, but the small business is the submitter of an SBIR or STTR proposal, and it is the recipient of that funding. The funding is to commercialize innovative solutions. Okay, so commercialize means market, sell, get that product out into the hands of users or customers, and it's for innovative solutions. So it's for brand new, novel solutions to existing problems, and that solution should have a significant market potential. So it's up to you to define to the agencies that your solution is going to have a large market that you can sell to. So again, SBIR stands for Small Business Innovation Research. The requirement is that federal agencies that have over $100 million in R&D funding associated with them must participate. So there are 11 federal agencies that meet that $100+ million criteria. The set aside for each of those agencies to participate is about 3.2%. So 3.2% from across those 11 agencies equates to about $2 billion annually. It can go up or down depending upon the amount of R&D funding that's allotted to each of those 11 agencies. But historically, it's been right around $2 billion. The program has been in existence for 33 years now, so quite a long history. There have been many efforts to reauthorize the program, which have gone through successfully. And a lot of the successes that have come from this program are in large part the reason that this program continues to be funded over and over again over this 33-year history. So a lot of great successes have come from this program. STTR, which stands for Small Business Technology Transfer, is a sister mechanism to SBIR. It's a bit smaller. Only the 5 largest of the federal agencies are required to participate. Their set aside for the STTR program is 0.45%. So about 0.5% of their budget goes into STTR. And that currently equates to about $200 million. The set aside for STTR has gone up over the years. It used to be 0.3%. Now it's up to 0.45%. So it's nice to see that the allotted funding for this program has gone up. Same with SBIR as well. It's gone up quite nicely over the past couple of years. So here's a pie chart showing the distribution of that $2+ billion that's awarded annually across those 11 agencies. You can see that the largest player is the Department of Defense, DoD. They put in roughly a half of that $2+ billion. NIH comes in second with about 30% of their of the $2 billion. NASA, Department of Energy, National Science Foundation each put in about 5%. And the others, which include Department of Energy, or excuse me, Department of Education, NOAA, USDA, etc., together put in about 3%. So you can see that there's a pretty big discrepancy between the agencies that participate and the amount of funding that they have available. SBIR and STTR are both broken into 3 phases. Okay? Phase 3 is the end. Phase 3 is the end. And when we work with clients, our first question to clients that are proceeding on with a proposal to SBIR or STTR is the question of what is the end goal of this research? Okay, what is the end product of the research that you're doing? And the reason we ask that is because we want to see that our clients have a clear understanding of where they're headed, what path they're going to be taking to get from where they are today to the end product. So what is this end goal? The end is an innovative, commercializable product. Okay? And that's what the federal agencies want to see when you submit a proposal, is that you can tell them in your proposal what the novel, innovative product or solution is that you're going to use this SBIR money to help create. Okay? And that novel, innovative product or solution must fulfill some significant need that exists within that particular federal agency and or some need out in the marketplace, aka the public or civilian markets. Okay? So there often are 2 distinct markets that could come out of the product that you develop in an SBIR, and again, that could be the federal agency, could be the buyer, the customer of whatever you're developing, and or there could be a public need as well. In most cases, you will enter into what's called phase one of an SBIR or an STTR. SBIR, STTR phase ones provide roughly $150,000 to $225,000 for 6 to 12 months of time to carry out a feasibility study. Okay, so phase one is is all about proving the concept, proving that your idea works. Okay, the type of project or product that you're developing will dictate what that feasibility study looks like. Okay, for example, a pharmaceutical that's being developed is going to have a very different looking feasibility study than perhaps a medical device or a coating for a jet aircraft. Okay, so a lot of people say, you know, what does feasibility really mean? And again, it really all depends on what is the type of product or the type of baseline research that you need to carry out to determine what is feasibility. Okay, so at the end of that phase one work, you should have some answers as to whether this idea that you have, that you've submitted for the phase one for, does that actually work? Did it really do what you hypothesized it could do in the first place? Win rates for phase ones can vary quite a bit, but in general they're about 15 to 20%, so about 1 in 5. Some solicitations have a much lower win rate, some have a higher win rate. It really all depends on what the competition is, how many people are submitting proposals for that particular topic, and really how much funding each of the agencies has allocated to that particular solicitation that you're submitting for. But on average, about 1 in 5 to 1 in 6 win rate. If you're successful in proving feasibility in your phase one work, you're eligible to move on to phase two. Phase two requires a separate proposal to be submitted and be judged or reviewed. Phase twos provide roughly $1 million to $1.5 million over a 24-month period. The goal of the phase two is to build upon the results that you gathered in phase one. Okay, so you can look at phase one as being a foundation that phase two then builds upon. So your foundation is prove the feasibility of your idea, and now phase two can often mean further development, perhaps some beta testing, field testing, working the bugs out of that technology. Again, how far a phase two is going to get you in the scheme of product development can vary greatly depending on the type of technology that you're developing. So again, if you're talking about developing a novel, innovative coating for a jet aircraft, you might get pretty far in terms of getting a product that's ready for the market by the end of a phase two. On the flip side, a pharmaceutical type project, a phase two SBIR or STTR is only going to get you perhaps through some animal studies, which in the scheme of things isn't very far. So as you well know, pharmaceutical research is very expensive. And $1.5 million, $2 million is only going to get you a little way. Where other projects, $1.5 million to $2 million in 3 years, it can get you pretty darn far. Win rates for a phase two are about 1 in 3. Okay, the win rates go up from phase two or phase one to phase two because number one, you've weeded out some of the competition. Some of the competition that won the phase ones were not able to prove feasibility, or for whatever other reason they didn't go on and submit a phase two. And now those who are invited to the phase two are kind of the cream of the crop. So win rates are about 1 in 3. Phase 3, again, kind of the end, is commercialization, or a commercializable product. So in your phase 1 and phase 2 proposals that you submit to these agencies, you must, in those proposals, tell a very strong, convincing story of the commercial potential and what the product is and the market size and the market need is. And what that does is it provides the reviewers an understanding that you have the commercialization mindset in place. Okay, you're acting as a true business, and you're not just looking at the phase 1 and phase 2 as purely an R&D funding mechanism to carry out research for the sake of research, but you're carrying out research for the sake of developing a commercializable, revenue-generating product at the end. Okay, so commercialization is the driving force behind the SBIR and STTR programs. So keep that in mind. So you might be wondering, how do I determine if SBIR or STTR is a better mechanism for me? Well, there are a couple of key differences here. So in the next couple of minutes, you should have a pretty good understanding of whether one or the other is a better fit for your situation. The first difference has to do with a research partner. So again, the small business is the awarded component of these mechanisms. Okay. In an STTR, the research and development that you carry out in a phase 1 and a phase 2 must be a joint effort, must be a partnership or a collaboration between the small business that receives the funding and a university. Okay. In an SBIR, there is no requirement that the small business partner with a university. Okay, so that's difference number one, is STTR requires a university collaboration, SBIR does not. The second difference has to do with who the principal investigator is majority employed with during the time of the award. In an STTR, the primary employment, and when we say primary employment, we're talking majority employment, greater than 21 hours a week. Primary employment of the PI in an STTR can be either with the small business that receives the SBIR or STTR funding, or the university that the business is partnering with. Okay. In an SBIR, the principal investigator must be majority employed by the business during the time of the award. Okay. So the small business, we've used these words quite a bit to define who the recipient is of this funding. Small business must be a for-profit entity. Okay, it can be an LLC, an S Corp, C Corp, doesn't matter. It cannot be a nonprofit or a not-for-profit. Okay. The small business must be at least 51% owned by individuals. Okay, 51% owned by individuals, which means it cannot be greater than 50% owned by another company that doesn't meet the small business criteria. It can't be majority owned by a venture capital institution. Okay, it's got to be 51% owned by individuals. And a small business is considered a small business if it is under 500 people in size. That is the Small Business Administration, the SBA's definition of what the employment is for defining a small business. So most of the awards, roughly 50%, are made to businesses with under 10 people in size. So it truly is funding going to the small of the small businesses. Okay. A lot of people will wonder, well, why isn't it that most of the awards going to companies, with over 400 people? They're still a small business and they can apply. And the answer is a couple of fold. Number one, that small business of 400 people in size likely has other mechanisms to fund their early stage research. They probably have they probably are using revenue streams to fund additional research that they want to carry out. And number two, a lot of times companies of that size are not necessarily as innovative as a company with under 10 people in size. They have their product line, they're working on marketing and sales and distribution and manufacturing, and they may not be necessarily on the cutting edge anymore. Yes, there are plenty of companies that are large that are definitely on the cutting edge, but it is really the smallest of the small that are taking best advantage of this funding mechanism, which is terrific to see. Your first step in identifying whether this program is a good fit for you from a technology fit standpoint is to carry out a solicitation search. So each agency publishes what they call solicitations, which are in essence requests for proposals, or RFPs. You'll see that in the SBIR.gov, which is a terrific portal for anything and everything SBIR topic oriented, you can search for both open, future, and closed solicitations. Okay. When you search for open solicitations, you will find that not all agencies appear in your search results. And the reason for that is because there are 11 agencies, and each of those 11 agencies follows a different timeline of when they release their topics and when their solicitation closing dates are, or proposal submission deadlines are. Okay. So if you do an open solicitation search and you don't find something that's a good fit for what you're doing, it could be because that particular agency doesn't have anything open right now. So your next step is to search closed solicitations. Now, the findings that you come up with in your search for closed solicitations are not going to be solicitations that you can apply for, okay, because they are closed. But the reason that you do this closed solicitation search is that you can see which agencies in the recent past had an interest in what you're doing. And it's likely that those same or perhaps similar interests still exist within those agencies. And when that particular agency has its next round of openings, that particular area of interest might be included in their solicitations. Okay. So that being said, your first step here is to try to narrow down which of those 11 agencies has the most interest in what you're trying to do. You may find that a couple of agencies do, or you may find that just one does. Okay, so that's homework step number one, is searching open and closed solicitations to try to start finding that needle in the haystack of where does my little technology, this needle, fit in the big haystack of the federal government. You can also, I suggest, go to the agency's dedicated SBIR and STTR websites. Okay, so after you've kind of narrowed down the field and said, okay, it looks like National Institute National Institutes of Health, NIH, has the most interest in my area of research. Okay, you can go directly to their dedicated SBIR STTR website and look at their open solicitations. And this is a screenshot of what you might find. You'll see that within NIH there are 26 different institutes, and each of them has multiple pages of topics associated with them. So you can call through that somewhat large area of, or large array of interests and see where yours might fit within those 26 institutes. National Science Foundation, NSF, on the other hand, has about 10 different topic areas that they have interest in. So these are quite broad topic areas, and they are looking for novel, innovative solutions that fall within these 10 different topic areas. Okay. NIH and NSF, as you can see, provide quite broad arrays of interests, and with that we call those grant agencies. Okay, so grant agencies provide very broad areas of interest, and they're looking for investigators, you guys, to bring innovative ideas to the table in your proposals. Okay, so that's called investigator-initiated research. The second school of agencies, which would consist of Department of Defense, NASA, and others, their solicitations are often very specific. If you search their solicitations, you'll see that they are looking for a very particular solution to a very particular problem that they have within their agency, whether it be, in their labs or out in the field. If your technology appears to be a very strong fit with one of their specific solicitations, it might be worthy of submitting a proposal. If it does not fit their very specific need, it's probably not a good idea to submit a proposal. Okay, so they're looking for very specific matches between solicitation and proposal. Okay, so two schools of agencies: grant agencies and contract agencies. Once you have found a couple of proverbial needles in the haystack, it's well worth your time and effort to communicate with the program manager at the agency or institute that you found the match at. A lot of people will find it perhaps cumbersome, or they just don't want to make that phone call to the agency. But this is really your homework step number 2, is to email the program officer at the associated agency or institute with a request for a phone call. Okay? And in that phone call, your goal will be to really nail down whether your idea, your technology area of interest, fits with that particular agency or institute's funding interests. So step number 1, review those solicitations, figure out which agency is a good bet for you. Step number 2, communicate with the agency. You'll find, of course, that some program managers are more communicative than others. That's just human nature. But perseverance is really the key. Getting that email communication or phone communication going is really, really important. Again, not just from the standpoint of making sure it's a good fit, but trying to find out if there are other people, other program managers that would be a better person for you to speak with, or perhaps if another institute or agency or branch may have a better level of interest than they do. So any kind of little nuggets of information that you can gather are certainly going to put you ahead of the pack in terms of your competitiveness. So let's talk a little bit about the proposal review criteria. The reviewers of your proposal will be usually 3 individuals, sometimes 4. Those 3 or 4 individuals will generally come with a couple of different backgrounds, a couple of very different backgrounds. Let's go on the premonition that you will have 3 reviewers. 2 of them are very likely going to be academic, research, scientific-oriented persons that are likely experts, or we'll call them pseudo-experts in your field. I say pseudo-experts because they're probably not as expert in your field as you are. You're living this on a day-to-day basis. They may be kind of researchers themselves, but not necessarily doing exactly what you're doing. Okay, so keep in mind they're not necessarily as expert as you are. Another type of background could be somebody from a small business environment who is also a researcher. Again, probably not a researcher as expert in your field as you are. Another person might be somebody more on the business development side of things. Somebody from either a small business or corporate setting. So you can see that there are a couple of different mindsets that you need to be writing your proposal to. You're going to be providing a very strong flavor of the technical expertise that you bring to the table and the technical credibility of the work that you're doing, but also being able to provide that corporate person, that business-minded person, a very clear idea of what is the commercial goal of the work you're doing. What is the product development goal of the work that you're doing? Okay, so you've got to provide two very different flavors that meld together, but 2 different flavors in your proposal to attract both of these types of reviewers. So these 3 reviewers are going to be providing scores on your proposal for 5 different areas of review: significance, innovation, approach, the investigators/team, and then finally environment. So significance, innovation, approach, investigators and team, and then finally environment. Significance is you describing what is the pain point that your technology is attempting to fulfill. Okay. You're answering the question of who cares? Who cares about the work that I'm doing? Or who cares about the product that I'm considering developing? It's up to you to define how important is this problem and what is the size of the marketplace. Okay. So if you cannot clearly articulate what is the significance of the research that you're doing in terms of the product, the problem, and the market size, you're not going to get funded. Okay, they want to see that you have a very clear understanding of what is the need in the marketplace. And again, this is not funding for the sake of just carrying out research. Okay, it's funding of research to fill some gap in the marketplace. Again, whether it be a pharmaceutical that fulfills some healthcare need, the coating on an jet aircraft is fulfilling some de-icing need or some radar decomposition need that they have. Okay, so you've got to define or understand what is the need that the agency cares about. Second criteria is innovation. Innovation is the middle name of SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research. Okay, in the innovation section, you are going to be explaining how is your proposed product novel? Okay, how's it different than the existing solutions on the market today? Okay, so in the significance section, you've identified a problem, okay, and stated that it is a very important problem. Now you're going to be talking about why is the existing solutions to the problems not working. Okay. You can explain many different ways how your product is innovative, but a simple way to think about it is how is it better, how is it faster, how is it lower cost than what's on the market today. A big component of innovation is what is your plan to protect the intellectual property if some intellectual property comes from the research that you do. Okay. So oftentimes work that you carry out in a phase one will get you to a point where you've got something that is protectable. Okay, and they want to see that you have an understanding of the importance of why you need to protect that and what is the plan in place to actually carry that out. What's the timeline that you expect to follow to get this product or this intellectual property protected? And that could be through a patent, it could be through trademark, copyright, trade secret, and it all depends on what the type of technology is that you're working on that's going to dictate which of those intellectual property protection measures is best for you. The reviewers are going to be keen on the fact that you are not just tweaking or making incremental improvements to existing solutions. Okay? They're looking for novel, higher risk, very different solutions. Okay, they're not going to give you $1.5 million to simply take off-the-shelf components and put them together to make a new novel solution to a problem. Okay, they're looking for they're looking for solutions that are coming at this problem from outside the box. Okay, coming at solving problems from a very different angle than how they're being solved today. Okay, so that's all about innovation. Review criteria number 3 is the approach. The approach section is, in other words, your work plan. Okay. They're looking to see if your research plan is clear. Okay. Does it follow from point A to Z? Does it have quantifiable milestones associated with each of the steps in your work plan? Quantifiable is sometimes not possible, but in most cases it is. Quantifiable simply means that you can easily demonstrate some measurable criteria when you finish your phase one, so that at the end of the phase one you can say that with X statistical significance that our data shows that we met each of our milestones and therefore we've proven feasibility. Okay, so if you can create some sort of quantifiable milestones for each of the tasks that you carry out in your phase one work plan, that's the best case scenario. They're looking to see that you have wrapped a timeline around the work that you expect to carry out. Based on this work, does it look like you are going to be able to carry this out in 6 months? Are you going to be able to carry it out in 12 months? Okay. If you don't wrap a timeline around the work that you're suggesting, it could mean that, or could appear to the reviewer that you don't necessarily have a good understanding of how long each of these steps is going to take. The big red flag in their minds is going to be, well, okay, if this team doesn't understand how long each of these steps is going to take, they may very well run out of money, and this project is going to be a total bust. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have kind of encapsulated your work plan into the allotted amount of time that you're being provided, which is 6 months in SBIR, 12 months in STTR. And certainly there's some flexibility with those 6 and 12 months figures. So those are not necessarily set in stone. Some agencies can provide a little bit of leeway on that. And finally, they're looking to see, is there preliminary data? Okay? Have you done some foundational work prior to your phase 1 submission that shows that this approach makes sense based on previous work that you've done? And this is going to build kind of credibility. Okay, it's going to show that you and your team have carried out similar work before. You've got some pretty good data that shows that, you know, working forward to prove feasibility is a good next step. Okay, so research plan with clear quantifiable milestones that can be completed in the specific amount of time that's being allotted. Those are the keys. Review criteria number 4 is an explanation of the investigators and the team that you've wrapped around the principal investigator. Okay. Those investigators and team members should have very strong technical scientific research expertise, okay, as it relates to the particular field of the phase 1 work that you're going to be carrying out. Okay, so they want to see that you have done similar work, similar research work in the past. Okay, they're not looking, or red flags would be that you know, your technical area of expertise is in civil engineering, and now you're you know, trying to develop, you know, a medical device. You know, they would be looking obviously for somebody with a biomedical engineering background in this particular area. So make sure that the principal investigator is very well aligned technically with the work that you're carrying out, and be sure to wrap around that principal investigator other team members who bring other sets of expertise that might be needed, whether that be a statistician or, you know, any other kinds of technicians, etc. They're also looking to see that people have research management experience. Okay, that's not just research experience, but experience managing research projects. Okay, so if you have taken part in other funded projects before, make that clear. Okay, and finally, review criteria number 5 is about the environment. Okay, environment is kind of broken into 2 parts. First is collaborators. Okay, any collaborators that you have brought onto your team that you're going to be subcontracting to, they're considered part of the overall global environment of where the work is going to be done, and make a very clear proposition as to what the facilities are that are going to be needed, including equipment, wet lab space, computers, software, hardware, and the fact that you will have access to those at the time of funding. Okay, so you don't necessarily need to have all of those things lined up at the time that you submit your proposal, but your sales proposition in the proposal is that you will have all of those things lined up at the time of award. Okay, so if you don't necessarily have space today and you're submitting the proposal today, you'll want to include a letter of intent or a lease agreement that's bound to whether you get funding or not. Okay, so again, you don't need to have all of these things lined up today, but you want to sell the fact that you will if you're funded. So the entire process is a maze. Okay, developing the proposal itself, the core of it, as we've talked about so far, is a maze. The solicitation searching is its own maze. The proposal submission and registrations and paperwork and submission formatting, that's all a maze in itself, right? So there's nothing easy about this process, especially the first time that you go through it. Okay. There are resources available to you, okay, and the first and foremost is within the Small Business and Technology Development Center. We're open to working with any North Carolina-based business. And the team that I'm part of, our Technology Development and Commercialization team, is a team of 4 of us who works very specifically with clients that are developing innovative technologies primarily through the SBIR, STTR funding mechanisms. So one of the primary sources of assistance that we can provide is through our one-on-one counseling services. And again, all of our services are no charge, confidential. One-on-one counseling entails meeting one-on-one with you and your team, discussing strategy, discussing those review components, reviewing of your proposal if you would like another set of eyes to take a look at that proposal prior to submission. We have a number of resources that we can lead you to, including the Biotechnology Center and other service providers that you know could come into play, not necessarily during proposal submission, but later on in your business development, including intellectual property attorneys, accountants, etc. So we do maintain a list of those, and you know, we're happy to provide those to you. And you can go out and interview and speak with those entities and see if they can help you down the road. So we are here. You know, our ultimate goal is to help you, number one, become successful and grow employees, grow sales revenue, etc., and to be a part of the process of helping you to bring more of these federal R&D dollars into the state of North Carolina. What's called the North Carolina Match Program, and officially called the One North Carolina Small Business Program, is a funding match mechanism for Phase 1 awardees that are based in North Carolina. So this program is operated through the North Carolina Board of Science, Technology, and Innovation, which is not the SBTDC, but a partner organization of. Every fiscal year, every June or July 1st, the state legislature, as they are developing their state budget for the coming year, must reauthorize this funding mechanism. Since 2006, the funding mechanism has been alive most fiscal years. This fiscal year 2017, which ends June 30th, has provided a significant amount of funds for up to $50,000 matches. Okay, these matches are as long as there's funding left in the pool. Okay, at the time that you receive your award notification letter from the federal government, you can apply for one of these Phase 1 matches. And the match money does not require any additional reviews or due diligence as long as you meet the criteria of being based in North Carolina, having won not more than 3 of these matches in the past. You're eligible to submit a proposal, and as long as there's funding left, you have a good chance of being funded one of these matches. The beauty of the match funding mechanism in North Carolina is that it is also non-dilutive, just as the federal money is, and the funds can be used for non-R&D expenses. Okay, whereas the federal SBIR STTR dollars must be specifically used for whatever the work was that you suggested in your work plan. The state money can be used for business expenses, hiring a business development person, carrying out market research, putting it in the bank for a rainy day, for use between the gap period between the end of phase 1 and the beginning of phase 2. Okay, so there's quite a bit more flexibility with this funding. And again, non-dilutive, you don't have to pay it back, and you're not giving up any ownership stake in the technology that you develop. The team that I mentioned is composed of myself, John Uveri, Chris Veal, who is our counterpart in the Winston-Salem, Greensboro, and RTP areas. Nicole Schwarbrock, she is the director of our team based in Raleigh. And Mike Carnes, who covers the Research Triangle Park area east to Wilmington, Greensville, and Elizabeth City. So between the 4 of us, we cover the entire state of North Carolina, working primarily with companies that are developing innovative, novel technologies, and for the most part, SBIR is a good fit for those types of companies. So with that, we will open it up to any questions that you have.